You have been carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. You show up as a quiet exhaustion, a constant mental replay of conversations you are trying to understand, and a lingering question about what you did wrong. You remember a time when things felt clear, when you trusted your own reactions, and when peace was just your normal baseline. Now, even simple interactions leave you second-guessing your memory, your tone, and your right to feel hurt. That confusion is not a sign that you are broken. It is the exact result of being placed in a dynamic designed to keep you off balance. You were not the problem. The imbalance was built into the relationship from the beginning, and the emotional toll you are carrying is proof that you were trying to love someone who is not operating from the same emotional framework. What you experienced was not a simple mismatch of personalities. It was a system of emotional control, often driven by a deep need for external regulation. People who operate from a narcissistic structure do not view relationships as mutual exchanges. They view them as environments where their internal stability depends on your reactions, your attention, and your compliance. The main psychological mechanism at work here is not cruelty for its own sake. It is a rigid need to manage uncertainty. When someone lacks a stable internal sense of worth, they rely on external feedback to feel grounded. That feedback must be predictable, controllable, and centered on them. To maintain that control, they create patterns that keep you engaged while slowly shifting the emotional responsibility onto you. You were not failing at the relationship. You were reacting to a structure that required your confusion to function. The first phase always feels different because it is designed to feel different. In the beginning, you were met with intense focus, rapid closeness, and a sense that you had finally been seen. Conversations moved quickly. Boundaries dissolved naturally because the pace felt validating, not threatening. This behavior happens because quick attachment secures emotional supply before your natural defenses can activate. Mirroring your values, matching your energy, and accelerating intimacy are not signs of rare compatibility. They are efficient strategies to lower your guard. The impact on you was immediate and subtle. Your nervous system registered safety. You began to share more, invest more, and assume the relationship operated on the same rules as every other healthy connection you had known. You lowered your filters because the signals told you that you could. That early intensity was not a foundation. It was a hook, and it worked exactly as intended because it appealed to your capacity for trust. Once attachment was established, the pattern shifted. The warmth became conditional. The attention turned selective. Small criticisms replaced open admiration, and you found yourself adjusting your behavior to regain the initial closeness. This phase happens because securing attachment is only the first step. The next step is maintaining control without revealing vulnerability. Consistent warmth gives you equal footing, and equal footing threatens the dynamic they need to feel secure. Instead of steady connection, you received intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes the connection returned fully. Other times it was withheld, leaving you analyzing your own words, replaying interactions, and trying to decode what changed. The impact on your mind was heavy. Your brain naturally seeks patterns to predict safety. When the pattern is inconsistent, your nervous system stays alert. You began to overthink. You apologized for things you did not do. You questioned your memory because the emotional climate kept shifting. That mental fatigue was not a personal flaw. It was the direct result of cognitive dissonance, the strain of holding two opposing realities at once. The person they claimed to be, and the person you were actually experiencing. As the dynamic settled into a routine, the control became more structured. Boundaries you once held firmly were gradually questioned, minimized, or reframed as selfish. Your time, your friendships, and your independent decisions were slowly drawn into their orbit. Triangulation appeared, sometimes through subtle comparisons, sometimes through manufactured drama that required your involvement. This behavior happens because isolation strengthens dependency. When your external support system weakens, your only reference point becomes them. They become the sole source of validation, correction, and emotional direction. The impact on you was a slow erosion of perspective. You stopped checking in with trusted friends because you anticipated judgment or exhaustion. You began to manage their moods instead of your own needs. You took responsibility for their reactions, believing that if you just communicated better, stayed calmer, or gave more, the tension would dissolve. You were not weak for trying to fix it. You were operating under the assumption that relationships are meant to be repaired through mutual effort. The dynamic you were in did not allow for mutual effort. It required your compliance. It is important to understand what was happening beneath the surface, so you can stop blaming yourself for it. The confusion you felt was not accidental. It was the mechanism. When someone relies on external regulation, they cannot tolerate being held accountable without feeling threatened. Accountability feels like rejection. Rejection feels like collapse. To avoid that collapse, they deflect, reframe, and redirect. You were placed in a role where your empathy became the tool that kept the cycle moving. Your desire to understand them became the reason you stayed longer than you should have. Your willingness to take the harder look at yourself became the very thing that allowed them to avoid looking at themselves. This does not mean they are evil. It means they are emotionally rigid. Their behavior is a protection system, not a reflection of your value. You were reacting to a pattern that required you to doubt yourself in order to maintain their sense of control. Once you see that clearly, the blame shifts away from your character and onto the structure of the dynamic. The shift begins when you stop trying to solve a system that is designed to keep you solving. Awareness is not about collecting more evidence. It is about stepping back far enough to see the shape of the pattern. You start noticing how your nervous system reacts before they even speak. You recognize the familiar tightening in your chest when a conversation shifts tone. You see how quickly you default to self-correction, how fast you offer explanations, how easily you accept responsibility for emotional weather you did not create. Recognition is quiet. It does not come with dramatic realizations. It comes with a steady understanding that your reactions were logical responses to illogical conditions. You were not overreacting. You were accurately detecting inconsistency. The goal now is not to confront them or to force understanding. The goal is to reclaim your internal reference point. You step back emotionally by observing instead of absorbing. You let their behavior speak for itself without translating it into your personal failure. Clarity returns when you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with it. Boundaries are the practical expression of that clarity. They are not threats. They are not punishments. They are simple statements of what you will and will not engage with. A boundary sounds like this. I will not discuss my personal life when the conversation turns dismissive. I will step away from conversations that involve yelling or personal attacks. I will not justify my choices to someone who has already decided they are wrong. The power of a boundary is not in the words, it is in the follow-through. When you set a limit and actually maintain it, you retrain your nervous system. You teach yourself that your peace is negotiable only with yourself. You stop waiting for permission to protect your energy. Calm detachment becomes your default posture. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what is not yours to carry. You respond instead of reacting. You pause before you defend yourself. You allow silence to do the work that words used to do. Detachment is not coldness. It is emotional preservation. It is the quiet decision to stop feeding a system that only runs on your exhaustion. Self-respect returns in small, consistent actions. It looks like checking in with your own body before responding to a message. It looks like leaving a conversation when it starts circling back to manipulation. It looks like trusting your memory when someone tries to rewrite it. It looks like declining invitations that require you to shrink yourself. It looks like choosing your own stability over the temporary relief of fixing something that was never broken by you. You do not need their approval to rebuild. You do not need their apology to move forward. You only need your own commitment to stop abandoning yourself in the name of keeping the peace. Peace that requires your self-betrayal is not peace. It is compliance wearing a different name. Real peace is quiet, steady, and entirely independent of their behavior. It exists whether they understand you or not. It exists whether they change or not. It exists because you finally stop outsourcing your sense of safety to someone who cannot hold it. As you step out of the dynamic, you will notice the weight lifting gradually. It does not disappear overnight. Your nervous system has been trained for high alert, and it will take time to recalibrate. That is normal. You will still feel the pull of old patterns. You will still wonder if you were too harsh, too distant, or too quick to walk away. Those thoughts are not truth. They are echoes of the training you received. You were conditioned to prioritize their comfort over your clarity. Healing is simply the process of reversing that conditioning. It happens when you stop analyzing their motives and start honoring your own limits. It happens when you allow yourself to rest without feeling guilty. It happens when you realize that silence is not abandonment. It is sometimes the only honest response to chaos. You do not need to explain your boundaries to someone who benefits from your lack of them. You only need to live them. Moving forward does not require you to erase what happened. It requires you to stop letting it dictate your present. You carry the experience, but you no longer carry the responsibility for it. You understand now that emotional manipulation does not always look like loud conflict. Sometimes it looks like subtle shifts, quiet withdrawals, and carefully placed doubts that make you question your own foundation. Recognizing that pattern is your protection. It keeps you from repeating the cycle with people who operate the same way. It helps you trust your instincts again. It reminds you that healthy relationships do not require you to shrink, defend, or constantly prove your worth. They require mutual respect, consistent communication, and the freedom to be yourself without fear of sudden emotional consequences. You are allowed to want that. You are allowed to expect it. You are allowed to walk away from anything that does not offer it. The closure you are looking for will not come from them. It will come from your own steady return to yourself. Closure is not a conversation. It is a realization that you no longer need one. It is the quiet understanding that their behavior was about their internal structure, not your value. It is the acceptance that you did what you could with the information you had at the time. It is the decision to stop waiting for someone to finally see you the way you have always seen yourself. You were visible all along. The problem was never your worth. The problem was the lens through which they were looking. When you remove that lens, the distortion disappears. What remains is your own steady presence, your own clear boundaries, and your own quiet strength. Protecting your peace is not about building walls. It is about knowing which doors to keep closed. It is about recognizing when a conversation is draining you and choosing to step back. It is about trusting your discomfort instead of overriding it. It is about remembering that you do not owe anyone access to your inner life, especially if they have used it against you. You can be kind without being available. You can be understanding without being responsible. You can love deeply without losing yourself. That balance is your protection. It keeps you grounded when others try to pull you into their chaos. It keeps you calm when they attempt to provoke a reaction. It keeps you clear when they try to rewrite the past. You are not responsible for managing their emotions. You are responsible for honoring your own. As you continue forward, you will find that the intensity you once mistook for connection was actually instability. You will see that the confusion was a sign, not a failure. You will recognize that your sensitivity was never the problem. It was your internal compass trying to point you toward truth. Trust that compass now.
Let it guide you toward relationships that do not require you to doubt yourself. Let it lead you back to routines, friendships, and spaces where your presence is valued without conditions. You have already survived the hardest part. You survived the erosion of your certainty. You survived the constant self-doubt. You survived the emotional whiplash. Now you get to rebuild. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of simple, quiet respect for the person who carried you through it all. That person is you. Peace is not something you earn by fixing what was broken by someone else. Peace is something you claim by refusing to stay in what damages you. You have the clarity now. You have the understanding. You have the right to step away, to set limits, to prioritize your own stability without apology. The dynamic that confused you no longer holds power over you because you see it clearly. You do not need to argue with it. You do not need to prove your point. You only need to live your truth consistently. Do that, and the weight will continue to lift. Do that, and your nervous system will remember what calm feels like. Do that, and your peace will become permanent. Not because the world changed, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to protect your mind. You are allowed to walk forward with quiet strength, knowing that you survived the storm, and you are no longer waiting for permission to breathe.